You're listening to the B&H Photography Podcast. For over 40 years, B&H has been the professional source for photography, video, audio, and more. For your favorite gear, news, and reviews, visit us at bnh.com or download the B&H app to your iPhone or Android device. Now here's your host, Alan Weitz.
Welcome to the B&H Photography Podcast. I am not your host, Alan Weitz. I am Liz Grushin, filling in for Alan while he is in China. I'm a photographer and a member of the Creative Partnerships team here at B&H Photo. I'm told Alan is on a well-deserved holiday in China. Well-deserved. I'm not sure if that's accurate or not. John's here laughing, but we are looking forward to seeing his photos of China, which he is going to post on the B&H Photography Podcast Facebook group, which we encourage you to join. I will be filling in for Alan for our conversation with photographer Corinne May Botz. Welcome, Corinne.
Thank you.
So Corinne May Botz, in case you have not heard this name, she is a wonderful photographer, writer, and filmmaker who creates multidisciplinary long-term projects. She has a sustained focus on space, gender, and the body that's very central to her work. Her series has explored agoraphobia, personal belongings left after car accidents, patient simulations, haunted houses, and the New Jersey Meadowlands. Corinne's work has been exhibited at the Museum of Contemporary Photography in Chicago, the Ben Ruby Gallery, the Bellwether Gallery in New York City, Hemp Hill Fine Arts in Washington, D.C., and Redline Gallery in Denver, Colorado. She's authored 2 books, Haunted Houses and The Nutshell Studies of Unexplained Death, which I highly recommend checking out this series. It is fascinating, both by Monticelli Press. Her current series, Milk Factory, creates images of lactation rooms, spaces created or utilized for mothers to pump breast milk while at work. The series provides insight into women's personal experiences, the maternal body's status in the workplace, and fundamental socio-political issues and government policies pertaining to the family. It's a fantastic series, and I'm not just saying that because I myself am pumping, but it's a great topic to discuss while we celebrate Mother's Day this weekend. It's my first Mother's Day, so
congratulations.
Thank you, John, for inviting me. It feels really special.
That's great.
So after all of that, Corinne, I have so many questions. Before we jump into Milk Factory, I just want to kind of circle around to your previous work kind of quickly. A lot of it is a little on the darker side. That's what kind of jumped out at me right away. But also your attention to detail is incredible. My first question, in terms of the nutshell studies of unexplained death, what drew you to that initially?
I started that project when I was actually an undergraduate student at the Maryland Art Institute, and I was working on a video about women who collect dollhouses, and I met a prosecutor who was also this obsessive dollhouse collector, and I had a previous interest in crime scene photography. And so when I saw them, it was this interest in gendered space, dollhouses, and crime scene that amazingly came together. So I was completely captivated and saw how I could reanimate these very sort of still objects photographically. And I was also really interested in the woman who made them, Frances Glessner Lee. And she established the first Department of Legal Medicine in the country at Harvard. And she made these incredible models. And she was really underrepresented. And I was interested in making people aware of her story and her influence within forensics. And then, of course, these amazing models. So I really lost myself in that project. I worked on it for 7 years.
Just to kind of jump in here, and if I can correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm describing the project, but they're shots of the dollhouses as if they had been in a crime scene created by her, or? So
they're 18 models that are at the Forensic Medical Center in Baltimore, and they were made in the 1940s and 50s after actual homicides, suicides, and accidental deaths for the purpose of training detectives, oftentimes the first to arrive at the crime scene, who didn't know how to properly analyze or evaluate evidence. And so they needed this hands-on training. You can't take them to a crime scene. So she came up with this brilliant idea. And they're all composites, and they're based after actual crime scenes. The scale is dollhouse scale, an inch to a foot. And she had a full-time carpenter working with her, and she also did a lot of the work herself. So they're just, in terms of her own imagination and how it interplays with these historic crimes.
When were they created?
In the 1940s and 50s.
40s and 50s,
and they're like astoundingly detailed and precise. And
well, when you look at the photos, I didn't realize initially that they were, dollhouses. I thought they were actual scenes, and then I, looked a little carefully, and they're pretty interesting. And attention to detail is key. Yeah.
And also like the gendered space, which relates to the current project. Out of all the, there's 12 of the victims were women, usually killed by people that they were intimate with and knew, just like in real life cases of women are victims of homicide. So the gendered component and the fact that she was a woman making them, that all really interested me a lot.
Since you brought it up, let's go ahead and jump back into your current work. And just to remind everybody, it's about lactation rooms. I am assuming that you started this while you were pumping?
Yeah. So I had this very strange pumping space in one of the colleges where I teach, and it was this like big room, really big, all these empty shelving units. I just thought it was so strange. I mean, I like spaces, I like strange spaces. And so as a way to record this early experience of motherhood, I felt like, okay, I got to take my camera in one day. So I took my medium format film camera and my tripod and my heavy pump one day to teach. And I took a picture, and I did it for myself, but I took a lot of pictures that first year just to, as a way of processing that experience. And I didn't necessarily think it would be a project, but I wanted a record for myself. And then I saw the picture a year or two later, and I thought, well, this like really intersects with all my other projects, in terms of our emotional and psychological connection to spaces, the way gendered space, how we categorize or compartmentalize space. I mean, all these different ways that I look at space. And so I thought this really makes perfect sense. And it's also this interesting way to talk about motherhood, because I feel like it's hard to find an interesting, well, it's not actually hard to find. I think motherhood is just underrepresented in terms of artworks.
Or represented in stereotypical ways.
Yeah, or like, especially with like Instagram and this type of, the way that we often see women represented. And of course, it's less about the children, it's more about the experience of the mother, and that's what I was interested in. And so it just appealed to me as this really interesting way to create a portrait of the mothers and their experiences through these spaces.
You mentioned portrait there at the end, but there's not a lot of people in the photos. And obviously your work does deal with spaces. Was there ever a thought that you wanted to make these more along the lines of a portrait or include the women even in the photos?
Yeah, I think the absence of the figure is really powerful. People have a tendency to gravitate towards the figure when they look at a picture, and it answers certain questions that I think are actually more interesting not to have answered. So as a viewer, you can insert yourself into the space in a different way. And yeah, so it is more about the space and less about the women, that's why. But then there's also, I am, for a few of the pictures, I mean, I do actually sometimes photograph the women pumping. Like this morning, my friend was like, oh, you can photograph? So okay, why not? I may as well take a few. So I think there'll be a few images that show the body in a really peripheral way. I always photograph long exposures with my digital medium format camera when the women are cleaning up the pumping space. So it's kind of long exposure. So it's not as much about what they look like. It's more about the movement. So I'm looking at ways to integrate it. But I do think overall it's more powerful, to project yourself into the space as a viewer.
Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. Because even I was sharing with some friends some of your images, and I might have already said this to you both, but she was like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. Like women are pumping like on a bathroom floor. And I was like, yes, this is what I've been doing when I go to a work event. Like that's where I go to pump if I'm not at work or if I'm not at my home. And so I think that it's really necessary and a really great visual, because you can say, oh, I had to pump in the bathroom, but until you see that somebody is sitting on a floor or sitting on a toilet to like do this job that needs to be done, and it's not for the mom, it's absolutely for the baby, it's really powerful.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the women, when they volunteer for the project, I mean, they like thank me for doing the project. They're really happy that I'm like bringing attention. Like the woman that I met this morning was like, well, I volunteered because people have, when I go into a meeting, people have no idea why I have to take breaks. They just don't understand.
Yeah.
And they walk by this room all the time, like on their way to the bathroom, they see it, but they have no idea. And so it's a blind spot. It's not constrained by pumping what I'm advocating, which is taking motherhood seriously in the workplace and the highest level of society, in public policy. So it's so much about the vital importance of mother and motherhood and not marginalizing that. And so it goes beyond the fact of pumping.
You had mentioned that you really weren't thinking about it at the onset of the project as this kind of advocacy piece, but how could it not be almost, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
I was always thinking of it as an advocacy piece for women, but I wasn't thinking of it as being educational in some basic way of revealing this blind spot, which it's become.
Well, that actually kind of answers a question I had, but I do want to bring it up still.
Yeah.
Would you consider these fine art photos as opposed to documentary photos? And maybe that'll take us a little bit into your process. But was there ever a thought that, okay, maybe I want to approach this subject differently than I have in my other projects, and find actual spaces and leave them as I find them? Or how much styling did you do to the spaces that you were working in?
Yeah. So I just think there's such a limited vocabulary within photography. I wish we had some new words invented to describe how so many people work, which, it doesn't fall into documentary, but expands that tradition in some way, I think with all my projects, I do have a documentary starting point, but I think of like my own hand and my own subjectivity as being such a huge part of creating that picture that I don't like to limit it to this idea of like, traditional documentary, but I'm not like a studio artist. I like going out into the world and learning about things and then developing projects from there. So with this project, I would say it is like my most social and political project I've ever done. I still think it's like the way that you lead a viewer in and how you tell that story. And again, like making the viewer, having their experience become part of that read and not saying like, this is pointing your finger about this is what it's about, right? Having that openness. Even the way I title them, like I title them after the professions of the women, and it's not about the place. So I don't want to tie it too much into like, it's not an expose about like, this is a terrible pumping place, this company does this. It's not about that at all, of course, It's more about these experiences. So it's another way where my work is like just as much, even though my work is just as much influenced by like constructed photography as it is documentary. Almost in all my projects, I don't touch a thing.
Okay. That's good to know. Yeah.
I like move myself around it because I think the thing is I photographed those miniature crime scenes for years, and you can't move anything around because it's a crime scene. It's glued in, right? So I got really good at like moving myself and playing with depth of field and lighting and these different things. So with the milk factory pictures, I have a conversation with the women, and I'll ask them, and we'll just talk. And sometimes I see a part of the room that I prefer to take a picture, and I'll say, do you ever pump over here instead of your desk? 'Cause I think this would be a better background. And then they're like, really? Some people are like, no way, I would never pump there. I'm like, okay, so we'll do it here. Some people are like, yeah, I do sometimes when I have meetings, I go over there. So I also just say before I meet them, if you have anything that you look at when you pump or anything that you do, can you please be sure to bring it with you? But aside from like moving something like 1 inch or so, I'd more like to find my place in the room, and I'm like super aware of framing and where everything is in the frame, and so yeah, I'm very much influenced by constructed photography and looking at that way, but I don't move things around that much.
Oh, that's interesting. It's clear when you see the work, and they're big prints.
Yeah.
So it's clear that they're meticulously composed and the objects are arranged, but there was no additional movement of items or placement of anything that wasn't there already?
No. I might ask them, I'm like, like you said, they're very formal. But yeah, I don't like today. Like, what did I do? I I didn't move a thing today. But if I have to move like a pump 2 inches to get something in the background, I wouldn't be opposed to it, right? But I usually just don't.
Yeah. The reason I mentioned that is specifically one image which I mentioned in the notes. Where it's a bathroom, I believe, and there's a can of air freshener, I believe, in one of them, and it has a purple, kind of a specific purple color, and then there's a pen of the same color down on the ground. And I thought to myself when I was looking at it, now that just can't be. Come on. I mean, that must have been arranged somehow or designed, and not at all, no?
No, I just showed up. I didn't touch a thing there. It was my friend's pumping space. She does have background in photography, so I don't know if she left me that as a little gift, but I didn't touch a thing. I just spent a long time taking that picture and getting the right angle. But she also had those little baby blocks in that picture, and she came to the opening the other day, and I was like, I just love it. You have these blocks. She's like, yeah, I don't know. They were just in the bag that day. So I pulled them out.
Oh, great. Wow. Yeah. And can you explain a little bit how you found the rooms and the people, the subjects, and the general beginning of the process?
It's always hard to start a project, and you're like, wait, how am I going to do this? But, it was much harder to find agoraphobic subjects than lactation rooms. This is pretty easy in comparison to other things I've had to get access to. And I put it on neighborhood baby groups and Facebook groups for like pumping and things. And then, a lot of friends of mine are having kids. So anyone in my building that has a kid, I congratulate them. And at some point I might ask if they're pumping at work.
And how many people were, open to it, were willing?
Most people are willing. Some people cannot get permission where they work. I mean, most people who are pumping, who have a pump space, are happy to do the project. It has been nice getting just the complete strangers who have volunteered, who don't know me at all. That's been
And
nice.
The parameters are always at work. So it couldn't be like if you're going on a long weekend or something and you might find yourself in a random setting.
No.
And what about the idea of breastfeeding? Is there, I don't know, a crossover with breastfeeding rooms, or is that part of the idea? Just pumping?
No, it's pumping. Yeah. I think I mentioned you have that like sense of separation, and it's this like strange, like oddness of like you're in this kind of lonely room by yourself for some reason. There's not many like communal pumping spaces, and it's recommended that you look at a picture of your child to help with the milk, to have the milk come in and
The letdown.
Yeah, the letdown. So you're like looking at this picture of your kid and you're not with them, and the pump's sort of like a surrogate for your child, and then the milk becomes this way that you're present with your child materially, but also in maybe another way when you're not with your child. And so there is something a little dark about that, or just this strange way of how like this complex, like strange way that we parent these days. So I think that's why like the breastfeeding wasn't as much of an interest.
And it's very much like, it's so simultaneously, for me at least, an emotional and like a completely non-emotional thing at the same time.
Yeah.
Like you have to have like some level of emotion in it for that letdown, and you have to like be calm and relaxed and making sure that your body is functioning so you can be successful in this process. But sometimes I find myself, I also have to get work done. So I might take my computer into the pumping room with me, and I'll try to look at a picture, or I like to look at videos, or sometimes I'll even FaceTime if my husband's at home.
That's what I used to do.
Which is like the best, I think, combination of things when you're not there physically. But then you have to be like, okay, now I have to move over and get some work done.
Yeah, I mean, I always am like, I always ask, like, do you have a book that you read? And like the moms are like, we don't read books when we pump. Like, it's like we don't have time to like read a book.
Do most people have an image with them though, or
a lot of people do? A lot of people do, but people are just working. Some people are just working. Like this morning, it was computer work, and some people just have like a minute to catch their breath and look through their phone.
Yeah. And how long is a session normally? Is there
depends, like 15, 20 minutes?
Yeah, 15 to 20 minutes. You could go longer if you wanted, or if it was recommended with like breaks involved. It depends on what I think your system is.
And usually at the same time every day, a couple times a day? I'm just kind of curious.
Well, in the beginning, it's like every few hours. Like every 2 hours you need to.
Right.
So, I mean, that's...
In the artist statement, it talks about it's recommended up to 6 months exclusively. And that can be impossible for a lot of women to even do, because you have to also factor in sleep, and if your production goes down if you stop pumping a certain time, but then you're exhausted because you're waking up in the middle of the night to pump, and then you come in, and sometimes it's really impossible to like leave a meeting that you have to be at, or people schedule back-to-back meetings, and you're like, but I have to squeeze in a pump.
Yeah, it can be really painful. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think they recommend exclusively for 6 months, but then to continue for a full year, actually supplemented with solid food. And so it's like more women are in the workforce probably than ever before, and they're being prescribed to pump longer than ever. Mm-hmm. Again, it's the question of like, what does the workplace do to mothering? How does that affect the women?
Can you speak a little bit about your presence with the women during these times? Did it bring out other emotions? Did they become anything other than a photo shoot? I mean, I know sometimes they were friends of yours, but maybe if they were strangers, did you talk?
Yeah, it's always like super intimate. I mean, I'd like to like record them, but sometimes it's just so quick and there's so much to do to like meet this new person and take a picture that I feel like I can't even turn on an audio recorder, but I try to take notes afterwards. Mm-hmm. This morning, the person whose room I photographed said, well, I cry a little bit every day when I leave. Like, and yeah, so basically it's this, it's kind of this amazing thing when you have a kid, you enter into this like history and this like tribe of motherhood, and just like sometimes this immediacy with which you can connect with people through that. And that's what the project has been, probably like my most pleasant project I've ever done in terms of just the experience of being there. So sometimes people they have a certain type of work schedule where they have, that room will just be open. So they'll pump, they'll leave it for me. I'll just come, I'll take the picture, and I tell them a certain amount of time that I'd like to photograph for, and I don't talk to them. That's happened a few times. Mm-hmm. And then a lot of times I show up, sometimes they say, oh, well, you can photograph me while I pump if you want. And if they say that, then I will, just, to kind of get in the mood of the space. Mm-hmm. Even though those aren't the pictures I'm necessarily like focusing on.
Yeah.
And then, usually it's a pretty intense conversation. I mean, pumping is this way of talking about like birthing and all these other reproductive issues. Mm-hmm. And I've had like a lot of really intense conversations, and also just about the work-life balance, certain things that people might have said to them, like, biased things that people might have said, reactions in the workplace, by colleagues.
Does that become not constant, but let's say a regular part of the conversation about the spaces and the, let's just, like you said, the political socio aspect of it?
Yeah, usually that just comes into it. I mean, it's not like I don't have anything in mind when I show up just to meet this person and be in that space. So anything that comes to the table, but you're always just hearing about someone's experience, and it's such an intense time period, because usually I'm photographing within that first year where it's like super amazing, but your life has been changed so dramatically, and pumping brings up a lot of those emotions. So that does always come into the conversation, it seems.
Do you have a goal of how many women or spaces, I should say, you would like to photograph?
It's interesting. My projects can get pretty obsessive while I'll work on them for a long time. And I do think this would make a great book. But I actually feel like I might need less spaces than I thought I did initially. There's certain things on my list that I still want to photograph. And, I'm still taking pictures, but I actually am trying to get funding to do a short documentary, experimental documentary film. Mm-hmm. And there's a sculptural component that I'd like to do with a larger exhibition. Mm-hmm. So I'm just going to keep shooting them. I don't have a certain number in mind, but I don't think I need like 100 like I did for the Haunted House project. Mm-hmm. But, one of the things that's so interesting is how diverse all the spaces are. I think I was even surprised by that.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, Mm-hmm. Can you kind of elaborate on that? Are there any spaces that just blow your mind in terms of how nice they are? And then maybe you don't have to name the places, but, is there a wide range?
Yeah, there's a wide range. I think... trying to think of the word to describe.
Because most of the ones that I saw in the work were generally generic and cold spaces.
I think I've only photographed like 2 really nice spaces so far.
I feel like that lines up.
2%.
But yeah, there's some really nice ones. And of course, there are lists online of like the companies that have the nicest lactation rooms. So I just reach out to them. And of course, they're like, great, we want to show how much we
And they tend to be women-owned or staffed
Yeah, and they like
businesses.
to like really promote that. Absolutely, yeah.
I would imagine. And when you're in the spaces, do you shoot a lot, or do you tend to? It's all medium format work, so
no. So I do 4x5 film too.
Okay.
So I thought when I got my medium format that I could like simplify and not carry as much stuff and not spend as much money. But then I'd miss my 4. I'm like sometimes I'm taking a picture and I'm like, I need my 4x5 camera. That's the camera I need. So I usually carry both. Today, this person sent me a picture of their space, and it was small, and I knew how much time we had, and I realized like I did not need a 4x5 to take this picture. But usually I bring it with me in the medium format, and I take usually like 2 4x5 pictures. And then it depends. Like if someone, they're hard to shoot. It's hard to find the right angle and that right like sort of energy of all the objects lining up in the still life. And so I do like a half an hour minimum, but usually I'd like more time. But yeah, I do have to be like very clear about, okay, what am I seeing? And it's just with a 4x5 camera, there's certain things I can do with a medium format digital that I just could not do with the other camera. And it's great for this project specifically when women, have a certain amount of time to be in the room or they have to be back to work. So it's a lot that has to happen. At the same time with the 4x5, there's just that, it's all about like how you're seeing, and there's sort of a magic of seeing with that camera that sometimes I feel like I really need in the spaces.
And have you said no to certain spaces just because size restraints?
No, I'll photograph anything.
But you have enough room with getting the setup of the 4x5 and the right lenses. What do you use in terms of lenses and things like that?
I just have for my I only have a 150 lens for my 4x5. I've only ever had a 150 lens.
Okay.
And then, super simple. That's why it's nice. And then the medium format, I have a 35 and a 55, but I mostly use the 55.
Okay.
Which medium format, may I ask?
I have the Pentax 645D.
Yeah. Good camera.
And the 4x5?
I have a Shenhao, like field camera.
Wow. So basically any space is kind of fair game?
Yeah, and if anyone's listening that has a lactation room, let me know. I'll give you an 8x10 print. So you have a little memento from that time of pumping. And I'll photograph anywhere. But, right now, like I said, I do have the list, like the military, like police, Wall Street. I have certain things that I want to cover, certain spaces.
Oh, interesting. That you've yet to cover.
Professions, yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's a great idea. Yeah. And do you feel more comfortable, and I don't say comfortable physically, but photographically when you're in the room by yourself, or in the sense of trying to find that image?
Yeah, it's really hard to talk to. So I think once I start shooting, sometimes if I'm there when the mom's pumping, then we talk then. But when I'm actually shooting, it's really hard for me to have a conversation and take a picture.
Course.
I would imagine, and this is just me speaking, but you have your conversation, you get to know the woman, the space a little bit, then maybe it's best to, when they leave, then you can go, okay, now I can really approach the space.
So most people get that. I think they just get that sense from me that I need to do my thing. So they say like, okay, I'm going to come back in a few minutes, just text me when you're done. And that's how it usually happens. But again, nothing's planned. It just is kind of a natural evolution of being there.
Has there ever been any issues with, management at the company or coworkers who they find out what's going on? They're like,
people get permission in advance.
They do, yeah.
Yeah, I met the HR person today. So maybe there's like a few places that I've been snuck into, but I don't even think so. I think most places people get permission and it's been fine. Yeah. But there's some places where people wanted to volunteer and the places have said no.
Yeah.
So that's definitely happened, but not when I was there.
When did you start the project?
Oh, gosh, when did I start the project? I had that idea for a while. It was just hard to, it was just a little bit before I started it. Let me see. Well, I would say I've been working on it for a year and a half now about. Yeah.
We are going to take a short break, and we will be back to talk with Corinne more about the milk factory and maybe some of her earlier projects.
We hope you're enjoying this edition of the B&H Photography Podcast. Send us a tweet at BHPhotoVideo, #BHPhotoPodcast.
We are back with Corinne May Botz. I'm talking about Milk Factory. And I just ran down to see the exhibit last night. And
Thank you for going.
It's also like curated books
Yeah,
on the side. Did you pick those?
Those are all from my library at home.
Oh, really?
So,
Okay.
yeah, I put
That was
those
great.
together. They let artists curate the library reading area. So,
Oh, that's wonderful. We were taking a look at those books when we were there that night too. That's great.
And
That's
some
great.
like other art pieces too, right? Like I saw this one that it was kind of like in a pamphlet, photos that I've taken out of my son's mouth.
so that was Lincoln
objects.
Clayton. So I curated another show in as part of this opportunity I had at Baxter in the main gallery space with 7 contemporary artists working with maternal experiences in their practice. And one of them was Lincoln Clayton, who's a conceptual artist. And that was one of her projects she did for an artist residency in motherhood where that sort of horrifying moment when your kid has something in your mouth and then you take it out and you're like, well, it's kind of interesting too. So he curated this collection of objects over a year or two period, and everything that she took out of his mouth became part of
that's
the
great.
piece.
Oh my
It's
gosh, that's
fantastic.
wonderful.
And
I
it
didn't see
reminded
that.
me, there's another artist, I forget who it is, but photographed things out of her son or daughter or his son or daughter's pockets.
Oh yeah, I remember that one.
Every day. But so those are all your personal books.
Those are all my personal books, yeah. It's like so important to have, for me, like artist friends who are mothers as well. And a lot of those texts felt very vital in the early baby, toddler years of motherhood.
And this is, go ahead.
Nope, I've been steamrolling this
No, not
since
at
we've
all.
been back.
Not at all.
So my favorite image, I think I don't know if I have a favorite, but I was really drawn to the cafeteria, the school cafeteria, for a few different reasons, I guess.
It's not a cafeteria, it's a classroom. It's a science classroom.
It's a classroom.
It's a science classroom, but someone else said that they felt like they could imagine it being cafeteria too, but no, it's a science classroom.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, well, either way, it just still seems it made me feel vulnerable. Like if I'm like putting myself into that situation, like who's going to walk in on me and what's going to happen? And because my pumping space is much smaller and the door is directly behind me. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like, no matter what happens, if somebody walks in, like,
She's very open, this school teacher. She's a middle school science teacher, but she pulls down this part of her door, and it says like pumping in progress. Mm-hmm. And then if people still want to talk or come in, she's totally fine with them coming in, but they just know it's pumping is in progress.
Right. And actually, that leads me to one of the questions I had. I don't remember if there was a car in any of these, and I don't believe there was, but it does actually remind me of your other project about what's left behind after car accidents. But for some people, they might prefer their own car or a space that we might not think as a nice space, but it's a much more personal, perhaps. Did you find people who were not at all really interested in pumping rooms or places that were supplied and have no really kind of issues
really.
pumping in
I think most
public
people-
or in semi-public places or refuse to pump at work or anything along those
I
lines?
haven't come across that, although I do want to photograph a car, and I heard there's a lot of people who have the hands-free bras and they pump and drive at the same time. So I'd love to include that in the project, but I have not had the opportunity. I had a police officer who pumps in her car, but it was like in Virginia, like very far away, so something a little bit more nearby. But yeah,
And this is it's an ongoing project, and you mentioned a bit earlier about some thoughts you have going forward, but has it kind of consumed everything, all these conversations you must be having? And I mean, if you're putting things out on chat rooms and Facebook, are you getting a whole ton of people responding to you? And
I wouldn't say that. Until the show happened, I hadn't made like any public announcement on my own personal Facebook or with my art colleagues. I just usually like to have a project underway before I put it out there. And now for the past 2 weeks since the show's been up and I've been having a lot of conversations there, and it's been great. But yeah, people contact me for different reasons, like, telling me how they saw something about the project and they were thinking about painting a mural in their lactation room. And someone else people who have different interests in making changes. So people do get in touch with me from time to time, which has been really nice because there are other uses for the pictures, I think, outside of my own initial intention making them. Like they could function in other ways as well.
Would you ever want to take them? We mentioned a little bit about kind of the political intention of this, but would you ever want them to become more politicized?
And how would you imagine that?
I'm not sure exactly, but maybe just to help like put these images in front of politicians or to use them to inspire more maternity leave. In New York, we have PFL, paid family leave, but not many other states are following suit.
Yeah, I would be open to it if like lactation rooms end up being improved because people look at the pictures and see like, oh, these are really unconsidered spaces. Certainly I am revealing the vulnerability that a lot of women face because you can see a lot about how someone's treated or considered by these spaces that they're given to use. So I think it's revealing. And if there were any like improvements as a result, that would be great. It's not, like I said, the intention of the piece wasn't that in terms of, so making lactation rooms better, that's like the cheapest solution. Putting lactation, that's like having lactation rooms in the first place, cheapest solution.
Right.
Yeah.
Obviously, the bigger goal is that you have federally mandated paid family leave, and like you do in pretty much the rest of the globe.
Any thoughts on expanding this to other places and to do like a compare contrast what you may find in a Scandinavian country or some other place where I'm assuming it's better?
Yeah, well, I was in Canada and I met with a few curators and they really liked the work. But they were like, oh, well, I don't think we have any here because, we've got such a long leave. We don't, there's not really a need for them.
Interesting, yeah.
So that's really interesting. I've thought about it. I mean, for me, like, having only like limited like finances to make projects and a family, like I have like a really am very careful about where I put my energy, and I'm not going to work on a project unless I feel like it's really important. So yeah, that would be expensive to start expanding outside the U.S. I would definitely I've done a little bit of research. I would maybe consider it. I would like to take pictures outside of New York City, but the truth is, like, I have found so many volunteers and interesting spaces just in New York City.
Right.
So,
and getting back to, Liz had mentioned that one of the photos is in a science classroom. Did you find many spaces that were not really dedicated pumping rooms, but really just a closet or something that people are using? And can you speak about that? And maybe outside of just the spaces themselves, but how that relates to the companies that they were working for or anything like that? Do you see any patterns that came up?
Well, there's someone who volunteered, but I haven't taken the picture yet, and she works in real estate. So she's constantly going around the city trying to figure out where she's going to pump, and it's really stressful, and she is hoping to like make some sort of change in terms of public lactation spaces.
Target has a good one. Public
She's
space.
got all the spaces. She knows like every neighborhood where she maybe can pump. So
it's amazing.
Obviously that's like someone who's freelance in that way.
Are there websites or apps or anything that help us out? Yeah.
Mom's Pump Here, and the person who started that's like a fan of my project.
And how about dedicated public spaces? I know, for example, you see in airports now that there are these little boxes.
Yeah, the Mama pods.
Yeah, where you can, I guess, breastfeed or pump.
Not too much. There's like maybe one way downtown in New York, but there's not too many. Yeah, that's the thing, is there's not so many.
Yeah.
Because it's an issue of like space and you keep them clean, but I think there is some need for that.
Absolutely. Can we get back a little bit to some of the photographic process? Can you talk about, one, post-process and like what you do, how your flow works in that sense, your workflow, and also some decisions you made in terms of the print size, because these are all really big prints. And is that something you've done with your other photos and other projects?
Yeah, so I used to do a lot of large-scale color prints in the darkroom. So when I print, I try to make things look as natural as possible in terms of the color. So sometimes you have to like desaturate, and when you shoot digital. And so, I feel like I spend a lot of time on all the files, getting everything right. And I have a 3880 at home. So I go to a lab to have the large-scale prints made, but I've already I have like match prints, and I've done most of that work myself. And of course, it's a 4x5 file. There's more like retouching that has to be done. And I really don't like like noise or grain. So I shoot like 160 speed film and 100 ISO when I shoot.
And you do your scanning, or that's all done at a lab, or?
I usually use the Imicon scanner, but I did just have a drum scan. Sometimes I find the drum scan actually like over sharpens the grain, so I don't like them as much. So I haven't found like the perfect drum scan situation yet, but I did just try at a new lab and I'm about to get that scan back. So
they're all digital prints, right?
They're all digital prints, and so I'm pretty like precise with the printing and having, even though they're different spaces, having them feel complementary and tone wise to each other, so they feel like a group.
Yeah, they do, certainly. Yeah.
And in terms of the scale, every project, the scale is really determined by the project, and sometimes I print small, sometimes I print big. I think there's some people who are like, okay, like I can make a big print, and they don't really have a reason behind that.
Absolutely, yeah, that's what I was getting at. Yeah.
And so for me, with this work, there's like a few different factors of why I wanted to make them big. I think they become stranger when they're bigger, and you can see more details like fingerprints on a table and marks on the floor where someone's walked through and little bits of milk spill. So all those details are elevated. And then people also take on a more physical relationship to the space. So the cell phone, with the woman who's looking at the cell phone of her baby pumping, it's the same size as a cell phone. So the viewer sort of having that experience that's more physical is important. But it's also, again, like these are places that people don't know about pumping because women are like, the maternal body doesn't really fit into the workplace. So you're banished to these spaces that are on the periphery of workplaces. And a big concern of all my work is like the ethics of like what do we get to see, and like how do we like seeing and acknowledging what we see. And so by making the pictures large, it's also about really wanting to make these spaces visible and create a conversation and dialogue around it.
Yeah, mission accomplished. I mean, I thought the size was important, and you do feel that a little bit more when you're there in that space. They feel more strange kind of when they're bigger. I don't know.
Yeah. When you can just kind of insert yourself into them a bit more easily, like especially with like when you walk in to where they currently are on display, and the bathroom is kind of like right in the back, and it almost like lines up perfectly. Well, you always go to the back for a bathroom, and then you would just step. It seemed to be the biggest one.
Oh yeah, that was 40 by 50. That was the biggest one.
And so you just kind of like just hop right in like a little Narnia portal.
The other thing about the science classroom, though, so that was one of the spaces where I asked if she could do the pumping stuff on that table, because I just saw that piece of tape hanging off that was like this strange detail. It's the sort of picture I would take anyway in like an interesting space. And then, there's like the messiness of like the body and the milk. And then, so as a result, you're almost put into these usually like antiseptic kind of clinical rooms to pump in. And I just like the idea of like these, the milk in these like plastic bottles are always in these plastic bottles. And then behind it, you see this two like dying plants from some like science experiments. So you've got the two and the two, and they both are like covered in this plastic. And then there's like a map of the water flow of New York City. So this idea of like flow and the flowing of fluid. So there's a lot of things that like, I saw in that scene that I wanted to capture. And that one, you kind of discover the milk a little bit later. Like the mom is almost like even less present in that one than other ones where the milk. So when I, in terms of the editing for the show, I'm like thinking about distance and having some variety in terms of like how close you are to certain spaces and pulling back and, having some variation.
Are you a quick study in the sense that you can look at a room and find all these details in a heartbeat, or are you someone that...
Yeah, I have like years of training. The Haunted House Project, I photographed like haunted houses around the country with ghost stories connected to them. And I mean, like a haunted house looks like any other house. So like my boyfriend at the time was always like, I don't get it. Like, why don't you just photograph our house? Like, why does it matter? Like, what do you mean with ghosts? So anyway, it was kind of true. Like I would go into these houses, I'd be like, oh, like what am I going to photograph? And that's like where the 4x5 camera was like what I needed to like ground me in a space, and it kind of like structures the way that you're looking and slows you down. And the pictures became a lot better once I let myself like be interested in what I was interested in. And maybe I like drove 10 hours to this special legendary house, and I was photographing like this weird mark on the floor, and I would like let myself photograph that, even if it didn't really explain anything. in an obvious way. So yeah, I usually am pretty good at honing in, but it's hard with the small rooms. The lactation is like just finding that right angle where all the objects kind of have this harmony with each other.
And do you set up the camera, look through the viewfinder, adjust? I mean, is there anything that you can speak about in terms of that aspect of the process? I mean, will you okay, this is the angle that I want to shoot from, but I'm not exactly sure what I want to include, and then you adjust,
I look through. That's why the 4x5, again, like it's upside down. You have that like level of the, so that helps. But I always shoot on a tripod.
Yeah. So this is kind of what I'm getting at. Like you have to determine the space where you're going to start from, and then you determine what you're going to photograph, or do you bounce that tripod all over the space?
Like today, I have like the initial spot where I think I want to start from, but then sometimes it changes. Like even with the one with the gun on the table, with that one, when I sort of scouted and went by the office, I thought I was going to take it from her position of the desk. A lot of them are taken from the women's position. And then when I got there, I took some from that angle, and they're beautiful. But I realized that it was being across and like really getting that surface of this table that's beautiful. It's obviously used for other purposes and for like meetings, and the way that she has this like sense of power and control in that image. And there's also like these crystals and this weird gun that's pointing towards the viewer. So this idea of like you could be sitting across and like having a business meeting in that space a few minutes from now. So I wanted a sense of like power. So that picture, also is like the edit once you look at the pictures, but definitely I'm aware of all those like different dynamics when I'm trying to take
Have you returned to
image.
a space to rephotograph that you thought it was worth?
No.
Now, how about lighting? What do you do in terms of lighting a space?
I'm not opposed to lighting. There's certain projects like the Haunted House project where it was like listening to the space, and I would never add anything to the space. This project is a little bit different. I would be okay with like elevating it and adding a little light. I do bring my flash in case I want to bounce it and just try something else. But usually, so far, there's only one picture that I've like bounced a little flash in. Otherwise, I'm pretty good at using available light. Sometimes it's just turning off a light in the room and using the light from outside if I have
Did you find a lot of rooms
most
rooms had windows, or
no, not really. That was just the one with the gun on the table. Like I took down the shades for some. Like I was like deciding, like I had a little more control on that. But otherwise, I'm trying to think. The school one had windows. I love that backlight window light coming in.
Yeah. I think it's also just in terms of light. So even here, it's a windowless room, but on Sundays, some of the floors don't have lights on, or you can't.
Oh, right.
We're conserving it.
Yeah.
And so I work on events and like special projects. And so sometimes I am here on Sundays. I could still pump, but it was completely in the dark. And so.
Oh, that's interesting. Oh, I haven't done that yet. A dark. I got to do that.
Yeah.
Maybe I can meet you here on a Sunday.
And do you find that some of the rooms that are multi-use rooms, that the women kind of they claim that space as their own, and then let's say they're done pumping, then a meeting comes in there and they're like, hey, come on guys, you know what I mean? Have you noticed any, or did you speak to anybody to say, I've made this room my own, whether that means adding personal touches or just the sense of, what's going on when I'm here is 1,000 times more important than the meeting that's happening afterwards?
I don't know. I think it is interesting, right? Because like work, we spend so much time, people will spend a lot of time at work, so it's an important part of their identity, and yet we have this like cultural binary of like there's work and then there's home. And so I think the milk itself just becomes that sense of like the personal within the workspace. In some designated spaces, you can put up like pictures of your kids and leave things there. But yeah, not exactly what you were saying. But then there was like a bar on the Lower East Side where I asked her if she had anything personal. She was pumping in a bathroom / like storage closet. And, her boss was on board. They invited me in. And
but she's a bartender, or she worked at the bar?
She's a bartender, yeah. And I said, oh, do you have anything personal? And she, kind of almost like got choked up and was like, no, I really have to like protect myself in this room and not bring anything personal into the bar when I'm working here. And people will even say to me like, why are you going over there? What are you going to do? So, that's like a really difficult profession to be like pumping and taking pump breaks in. So, like, I guess it's, just like motherhood. Everyone has such a totally different experience and like different situation at work.
Is that fair to say that, I mean, this is a relatively new issue?
Well, it was the 2010 Affordable Care Act.
Okay.
That certain companies with a certain amount of employees were required to put in lactation rooms. And that's why I think, I've been like focusing on those like strange spaces where they're like, okay, we need to now make a lactation room. What will we use? Here's this closet that we had. And so I think maybe going forward, there'd be like a different consideration for the rooms when it's actually built into the architecture of the space.
And it just comes like from the books that I've read and talking with like more working mothers now, it is like on us to help affect change. So it's on like projects like what you're doing, and it's on me going to HR and demanding better support. Facilities. So we'll see. I think it's really slow. It should not. You're right. It shouldn't be like on us.
You can see like from like the images and like the titles of them that like these women are just doing so much anyhow. Like, right. Yeah. It's such a complex balancing act.
Has anyone spoken about the time that it takes to you? Or has there been any, or maybe this is to both of you, where, it's 15 minutes at least several times a day?
Yeah.
Has you had conversations come up to say, hey, after the meeting or anything along those lines?
Nobody says anything to me. I have a very supportive manager, and my team is supportive. And I'm pretty open. Yeah. And so I'll just be like, I got to go pump.
Yeah.
Because I think that does help. Like, you're right. It shouldn't like be on
it shouldn't be shrouded in secrecy either, right?
But it's just like part of who we are. And I think the more like you make it normal, the more normal it becomes.
I agree. Yeah. And did you speak to any HR folks, as part of the project or just by chance when you were going
this morning, I got introduced to the HR person. She was really sweet. She wanted to know the plans for the project and said she was really happy that I was there photographing, including their space.
Did you mention the companies or the spaces?
I don't, though. Yeah, I don't, because like I said, I want it to be, I don't want that to be the emphasis. But yeah, I don't know. I'm just thinking about like making it better. I mean, that's also how I feel about, like, maybe in a way, there is something more like direct about this work maybe than some of my other projects. And that might have to do with like a different change in mindset after becoming a mother. And this feeling like here, just like so many other women here, at a certain point I was like pumping, I was like nurturing my child. And then you think about the world that they're going to grow up into, and you really want that world to nurture them in exchange. And, this like dream of whether or not you have kids, that everyone, you decide to or not, that you're all your decisions like respected and supported in the workplace really has not come to fruition.
Yeah.
But hopefully I think things are changing and there's more women in the Senate and in Congress than ever before. So,
and I think too, like the company names don't matter as part of it.
No, I wouldn't. That's a good point.
But it is interesting. Like if a company does say no, well, maybe that company should explore why they said no. Like that, like is kind of the message right there. Whether or not. I mean, they're probably missing a few messages if they get to that point.
Well, even just the fact that you're making this project, you're using their space, hopefully that'll force them to rethink their space, and maybe when the budget and the next time for a renovation comes around, they'll make a better space. I don't know.
I mean, even just like well-meaning people sometimes are just completely oblivious, unaware of like what it looks like, or just, or just the fact of needing pumping breaks and why.
Yeah.
So I think we're
So just to circle back, a lot of your projects are long-term. Some of my projects tend to go long-term too, but I don't always know when to stop. And I'm wondering if you ever have that issue, or if you have a goal of how long you want to work on something ahead of time. How do you approach that?
I don't. I mean, I think if I had more money, my project might not be so long term. I'm like a little slow worker because I don't necessarily have the money to like devote myself to something. But
but that takes more dedication too. If you have to know, you have to go the hard way and finish it anyway. Right?
Yeah. So I mean, I think I like long term projects. I do a lot of research with my project, so it's part of it. That's like this process of do a lot of teaching during the school year, and then in the summer, oftentimes I'm focusing on my work more and. trying to get access to places. So there's different stages. I think I usually know when to stop. And like I said, I don't think this project will be quite as obsessive as like Haunted House. But I do want to do this film, and I'm applying for grants to do this film component. And because there are, like I said, so many interesting conversations that happen around when I meet with women, and I want to bring in those stories, but like not in like the way, not like just recording conversations while I'm meeting with them. There's like something specific I have in mind with like 3 certain locations that I want to focus on, the sort of politics and situation of pumping, and they're all 3 like super different situations. So that's my main goal right now, is to try to raise some funds to do that.
And how many people did you shoot, or spaces did you shoot so far?
Gosh, I don't know. I haven't counted. I think around 20-something right now.
Okay. I know you're not a policy maker, you're an artist, but do you know what you would like to see done in terms of making the pumping room, the lactation rooms better, or just a general overall, better understanding of the needs of women and mothers in the workplace?
Yeah, I mean, there is that wage gap that we talked about before, which is because women have children. So, and I think that's like you mentioned, women doing things. I think it's also about like the men in the companies, and because like having, and it's the paid family leave, how that benefits everyone, because you have healthier families, and that benefits everyone down the line as well. So, yeah, I mean, like everyone else, it's almost this like across the aisle, like it seems like everyone wants paid family leave, and I don't know, it's something that brings people together. Even I've noticed in politics, right? Yeah. People are like,
And when we were talking about your experience in Canada, do you think maybe the very, very long-term goal would that there wouldn't be any lactation rooms, because
we would banish the lactation rooms and have 6 months, have a year paid family leave? That would be great.
Yeah.
The pictures could be like, look at this time period where women had to pump.
Look at how far we've come. That would be fantastic.
That would be great.
Well, with that, I think that is the perfect segue to me to wish you a happy Mother's Day.
And happy Mother's Day to you.
Thank you. And thank you so much for coming on the podcast, and let us know where we can find your work moving forward.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for having this conversation, inviting me. It's been great. And you can find my work on my website. My 2 books are available on Amazon, where books are sold.
The website being?
www.CorinneBotz.com. It's 1 R and 2 N's.
Right. And BOTZ?
Yep, BOTZ.
Instagram?
Yeah, on Instagram.
Same name? Okay. So the show is currently up at the Baxter Street Camera Club. It's going to be ending this week, so it won't be there for Mother's Day, but is there any thoughts or plans on it showing elsewhere, exhibiting elsewhere, and what are the future for this? And tell us.
Yeah, so I'm working on taking some more pictures, and there's a sculptural component and also a video element, so I absolutely will hopefully show this project a lot. This is kind of like a sneak peek to start the conversation, and it's been great to create a dialogue and kind of get responses from people having the work up. It's been a great opportunity. It was actually came to me through a new collaboration between the National Young Arts Foundation and Baxter Camera Club of New York City. I'm an alumni from the National Young Arts Foundation from 1995, and I teach in the program now. And it's just an amazing organization in terms of like supporting artists and their young artists and their work. And it's so inspiring to work with these students.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's really cool.
And the 2 books are on the Haunted House and on the dollhouses, the miniature spaces.
The 2 books are Haunted Houses and The Nutshell Studies of Unexplained Death.
The Nutshell Studies, how did that name come about? Is that the name of
That's the name of them, yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
And you can find them wherever fine books are sold.
That's right.
Great.
Well, this brings to close another episode of the B&H Photography Podcast. We encourage you to subscribe to our show on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Overcast, and Spotify. All of these links can be found on the podcast landing page on the B&H blog Explora. Also join our B&H Photography Podcast Facebook group, and please leave a comment or a review on Apple Podcasts, especially how much you miss Alan. It really helps. On behalf of John, Jason, and Alan, I'm Liz Gresham. Thank you so much for allowing me to guest host. Next time, Alan will be back with John.